potential members. Happy to have you here tonight for this January 24th stream, day before conference championships. Just 3 more games in the NFL season. It's either going to be Mike versus Mike, or Sean versus Sean, or Mike versus Sean in the Super Bowl. Going to be fun either way. I'm personally, for my playoff best ball interests, really rooting for a Broncos loss. I've got teams that are live for Pats Seahawks and Pats Rams, so that's what I'll be rooting for, but should be some fun games either way. I see Goldhorn here in the chat talking up the Rhino, as he always does. I see Austin here. Nico here calling out the year 3 breakout for Marvin Harrison. Yeah, I mean, whatever pure potential says, you want to go ahead and just do the opposite. That guy was not in on JSN. He wasn't willing to pay the 103 for Roma Dunze, and we see how that, worked out. So definitely fade whatever that guy is saying. As you guys might notice, looking at the chat, I did finally update the icons for members on the channel to actually reflect the current branding. So we've got the yellow rockets for new members. We've got the light blue rockets for, I believe, 2 months members, the dark blue rockets for 6 months, and then you get the real pure potential logo there for 1 year or higher. So we did go ahead and get that fixed finally. We've got Trent here in the chat. We got Carson here. Morgan, new member. Shout out Morgan, who just signed up today. Welcome to the member stream. Very laid back relative to the normal content. It's very much just freestyle. We're just kind of riffing on some ideas. Guys, feel free to interject with questions, comments, whatever. The main theme for tonight is going to be looking at the running back landscape. Basically, I'm going to go team by team and look at every single backfield. Some of them are going to be pretty boring, and then other ones are more interesting. Just kind of talk about like what I see for this team, how I'm valuing the players, try to jump into some of the more interesting offseason storylines, like range of outcomes, stuff like that. The plan is to do that tonight, and then next week, maybe we do wide receivers, tight ends. And then the week after that, maybe all the coaching stuff will be figured out. We can look at all the new coaches and coordinators around the league. Basically, trying to be kind of organized here and get like a full overview of the NFL landscape, see what we can pick out in terms of trends, stuff that we maybe are overlooking or that I'm overlooking with certain players, and just see what we come up with. But I do have some questions here to get to first. The first one came in from Nick G, which was about trading in startups. It's been a big talking point in the chat. I'm going to be honest. I think it's pretty, like nebulous and difficult to really pin down exact dynasty startup trade strategies, because there's just so much variety from room to room. Like, you're just not going to know exactly what to do. Like some rooms are going to be really loosey-goosey with future picks, and you can kind of try to exploit that, and you can get a lot of pick value to move down. Some leagues, it's going to be really hard for you to get any value to trade down, and then you're looking at maybe more sticking in your spots. If other people are trying to trade down, you often can get good deals to move up and secure value. I know we saw, I think it was Kaiser in the chat, who had a crazy startup where he got like 3 second rounders. He ended up grabbing Bowers and Burrow, or somebody, Bowers and I can't think of who he got, but he had a really good looking team. And so I do think you get a lot of variety in startup drafts. And so it's hard to say like, yeah, just trade from this spot to this spot and get this amount. But I will say a couple tenets that I try to use when I'm trading in startups. The first thing is, don't give up the chance to secure elite assets. So I'm very rarely looking to trade out of the early parts of startups, because the hardest assets to get in Dynasty are those top tier elite scoring assets. They're very difficult to trade for in established leagues. You have to consolidate a lot of assets. Most of the time, managers don't want to move them. So when you are in a startup, you want to take advantage of that chance you have to get a scarce asset, a Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Josh Allen, Brock Bowers, whoever that is, you want to get that player on your team. And in fact, I'm much more inclined to actually try to get an extra shot at one of those players than I am to trade out of my opportunity to get one of those players. So I'm typically trying to stay in that range. It doesn't mean I won't move back in the first round or even into the second round if I think that there's a big enough tier there. But it's easier for you to pick up future picks in other ways. It's harder to replace those blue chip assets. So that would be one thing. And I'm generally like pretty gun shy about trading my first in startups. And that's going to be especially true this year where the 2027 class is just so highly touted and highly regarded. I think you're going to see so much hype and desire for these picks that I'm just really wary of trading 27 firsts in general. Like I know that their value is already high, but with however high the value is now, you have to anticipate it's only going to get higher. So I do want to be really careful about trading those picks. And on the other hand, I want to be really proactive in getting those picks. So as soon as you're in like, even like the sixth round, I would be probably willing to trade that pick for any 2027 first if someone is willing to move it. I don't have a startup draft in front of me at the moment. Let me see if I can pull one up. Let me pull one up on my phone just so I can see in my last startup who was going in the sixth round. I know I traded out of my 8th round pick for a 2028 first and second in my last startup. But in this same startup draft, if we look at the 6th round, we're talking about, okay, Breece Hall, Chase Brown, Baker Mayfield, Travis Hunter, Cam Ward, Quinshon Judkins, Sam Laporta, Oronde Gadsden. This was the 6th round. Yeah, so when you get into the 6th round, like just ping the chat. Any 2027 first gets this pick. I think in a lot of lobbies you're going to get that. And I think as much as it feels bad to lose one of those earlier picks when you're building out a team, I think you'll find it's a lot easier to replace that type of player than it is to go out and get one of those first rounders later on. And then once you're into like the 8th round, that's when I would ask about 2028 first, because people are more willing to get rid of those. Like I said, I got one for my 8th rounder, which I traded for a 2028 first and a 2027 second in this draft. I think it was my 8th rounder. So that would be another one. Don't laugh, bro. I may or may not have drafted Travis Hunter. It was like 3 weeks ago, to be fair. But you're just a hater also. Like I listed a bunch of other players there that are extremely mid and you really had to single him out. That's kind of crazy. Like you could have made fun of Sam Laporta in the 6th round, but no, you chose Travis Hunter. Unkind. Let's see. When you are considering a startup trade, I mean, the best way for you to do this is to just try to anticipate what players are going to be available. The way that I do this, if I really don't have a good feel or I don't have a good source of ADP, here's what you can do, okay? It takes a little bit of time, but if you have access to the rankings, it's not as hard as you think. Literally just line up the next however many players it is until that pick. So you're considering trading down from the 605 to the 708, right? Okay, so that's 15 picks from now. Line up the next 15 players. Who is like the worst possible guy that you're going to get at that pick versus the pick you have right now? And then just look at what the difference is, right? So what is the difference in that value? Most of the time in a deal like that, if you can get a second round pick, that's going to be a good swap because the gap is probably less than a base second between those two assets. It gets more complicated when it's just pick swaps because you're moving up and then you're moving down, but you can kind of do the same thing. It just takes a little more effort, a little more, predictive powers, but you're just trying to anticipate like what caliber of asset you're going to get. So it's like, are you moving from a guy in the early second tier to a guy in the late second? Okay, so what's the difference between an early second and a late second? If you're making up, a second round pick worth of value there, that's a base second, like that's going to be worth it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's easily the best way to anticipate. You see some of these trades that people make where they trade down like really cheaply, like a second round startup pick for a 2027 first and a 9th round pick or something like that, which happened in this draft that I'm in. 9th round is like Chris Godwin, Trey Harris, Jaden Higgins, Devonta Smith was kind of a value, but like, are you trading a second round startup asset for a 27 first and Devonta Smith? I would not do that. So you just have to try to put a player there in that slot, and that's going to prevent you, I think, from making like really disastrous trades. Last thing I'll say is I mean, the sample size is small, so take it with a grain of salt, but I've seen people undervaluing picks in like the 10th, 11th, 12th round relative to picks in like the 7th or 8th round. And I think it's important to remember that in a startup draft, the value does not decline gradually. It's not a gradual slope of value. It's precipitous. It's like it starts up really, really high and it goes like really sharply down right through the first few rounds. And then it starts to level off. And by the time you get to 9, 10 round range, it really becomes pretty flat, where there's just not that much difference from one round to the next. And so people think of these 10th, 11th, 12th round picks as like being really low end, but especially right now with how rookie picks are dropping, like you're looking at maybe early seconds there, at worst mid seconds. And I think people are undervaluing those picks. I've seen them just like thrown into trade backs like for nothing, where you're not moving back that far. You're just picking up an extra 10, an extra 11th round pick. So just something to keep in mind. I think relative to like the 7th or 8th round, where people are still kind of trying to get their guys and think that's like premium territory, I think those picks are undervalued. And you look at the 7th and 8th rounds, like it's not premium assets. We're looking at like, Jordan Addison, Bryce Young, Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf goes in the 8th round here. Like there are some good players, but they're not like, game changers. And you get down to the 10th round, you've still got someone like Ricky Pearsall there, like the 204, 203, 204, multiple rounds later. So obviously there's a drop off, but it's not like a massive drop off. So that's kind of my point. All right. So that was one thing. And then I had a couple things from Yella. He asked me like several questions. He's been kind of greedy here, but I'll try to hit him real quick. He said, first of all, the trends in fantasy football over the last few years, are there cycles of valuing positions higher? For example, when I started, quarterback first and second round was the play. Running back was less valued. Now the landscape shifted to wide receiver. Now we're seeing an increase in running back value. Is this something that historically rotates? So, I mean, absolutely, there have been trends. I can't say that the data goes back far enough to say like historically this is what we see, but I think it just makes sense. The NFL is a cyclical game where tendencies change, how the approach of teams changes. Like we used to be a much more pass heavy league, and we've seen consistently pass attempts going down, rushing attempts going up, play volume going down. So if things are going to be cyclical like this, then it makes sense that dynasty value would be cyclical as well. It's the game within the game, right? The meta changes. So yeah, we are seeing an increase in running back value. I think it's correct. I'm trying to adjust to it properly because I became a high volume dynasty player I started like when I first started playing dynasty, it was like running backs were the premium assets in dynasty. It was the 2017 class was in their prime. Christian McCaffrey was the 101. Saquon Barkley was right there, right? Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon. These guys were worth their weight in gold. And then I saw the shift to elite quarterbacks, and then the shift to elite wide receivers as the meta. And now we're seeing these running backs kind of resurging, the ones at the top. And I'm trying to be open to that because I've been very like steeped in the elite quarterback, elite wide receiver stuff through so many of my startups. But I do think it makes sense that we're seeing a return to the high running back values. But yeah, it does rotate. It does change. We got to just try to stay ahead of it and recognize when it's efficient and when it's over the top. Like I think people taking Bijan Robinson 101 I think that is over the top. I think that has jumped the shark. I would not recommend doing that. But I think I was behind the curve when I didn't have Bijan as like a first round startup pick until, more than halfway through the season. I was like, okay, I concede here. Like this was a mistake. Second question, with the likely increase in late declares, do we compare those older rookies to rookies in their class or guys their age? Yeah, so this feels like a question that would definitely be better answered by someone like JJ Zachariason, who actually tests these things. I know that early declare status, especially for wide receivers, has had a lot of signal for production. I do think it's been overvalued at times. Like Chris Olave was somebody that a lot of the analytics community faded because he was not an early declare. And so you can get into trouble there. But yeah, I mean, I would imagine that this is going to change a little bit, at least, because we are seeing more people go back to school. So I think just something you're going to have to be smart about. I think the key with these late declares is like, is the early career production there? Like, that's what you really should care about more. Did they break out as a senior, or were they always good and they just stayed in college because, why not? You're getting millions of dollars to do so. So that's where I would say is where we probably need to find the middle ground. And then third question, is it silly to think that the data nerd metrics don't matter as much for running backs as other positions? We see gross guys at running back score points with less than impressive metrics. Harvey, sad metrics got me curious and contemplating if those nerd stats are more valuable at wide receiver. No, they are undoubtedly nerd stats are more valuable at wide receiver. It's a really simple reason why. When a wide receiver is on the field, they are not guaranteed the ball in the majority of cases. They have to earn a target. A running back does not need to earn much of anything. They are pretty much given the vast majority of their volume. And so as long as a coach is convinced that giving that running back the ball is the best decision, then they're going to get the ball, whether their metrics are good or not. That's why handcuff running backs are way more interesting than handcuff wide receivers, because we know those guys can go in there and just soak up touches like a sponge. So when we're thinking about metrics for running backs, what we're trying to do is weigh talent, because we know that in the grand scheme of things, talent is going to drive volume at running back. That's not going to be the case individually all the time, right? It's why I was fading Kyren Williams for the longest time, because there was no reason based on the metrics he was putting on paper, his actual performance on the field, that he was deserving of the type of volume that he was getting. But it didn't matter, because Sean McVay wanted to give him the volume regardless. Now, it did sort of catch up to him this year, where Blake Corum proved to be a comparable talent, and he siphoned away like 30 to 40% of the work. It didn't really matter because the Rams offense was so efficient this year. And Kyren, to his credit, was actually way more efficient this year. But had the Rams offense been more in line with their last couple years' performance, and they still had this split with Corum, Kyren would have fallen off a cliff this year. He would have been like a 13 points per game running back. But that's not what happened, obviously. So we should still care if running backs are good, if they're putting up these numbers, but we also need to factor in the context like way more, where sometimes these guys are just going to keep getting touches. But you could look at someone like Rachaad White. He had a massive season the year before Bucky Irving got drafted, and some people were getting really sucked into that and drafting him really highly. They were trading late first for Rachaad White, who was awful. He was terrible that big season. He was just getting fed tons of volume, tons of garbage, and he was not doing anything with it. And so, yeah, it wasn't very surprising that a day 3 running back came in and just completely stole his lunch. And so, we should have cared about Rachaad White's metrics, and those did ultimately come to catch up with him. Rich Hill is another example here. Woody Marks, terrible metrics. Houston traded up for him and like him. Yeah, so that's one where I'm going to be behind the curve on Woody Marks, because I do care about that talent, and I don't think he's good at all. And yes, it is true that the team invested a surprising amount of capital in him. I don't know if that guarantees him, a bulk of the workload next year. Even if he is still highly involved, I'd be pretty shocked if his best competition is on the level of like a Nick Chubb. Like, I could see them bringing in a legit counterpart. And I think that that counterpart, if they're like anybody at all with any ability, it's going to force, a 50-50 split pretty fast. And then what kind of utility are we getting out of Marks, who's not even really been involved as a pass catcher, which was supposed to be his whole thing. So, so I'm not thrilled with Marks, but again, it's still a judgment call. It's still a judgment call about whether like he's going to be that guy. Yeah, I know he's supposed to be that guy as a passing down back. He was in college, but I mean, they didn't throw to him hardly at all this year. So I don't like Rachaad White has always gotten the receiving volume. I don't understand why they didn't use him that way. They're bringing back the same OC next year. Maybe it was a pass pro issue, but like, why not more on early downs? I'm not sure. Was Woody Marks playing? Rich, maybe you can tell me. Was he playing on passing downs a lot? Was he playing on third downs, or were they taking him off the field for a Goombawale? Because I don't really understand why he didn't get the PPR stuff. Anyway, that's our those are our first few questions. That's going to bring us over to the backfields. All right, that brings us over to the backfields. This is a chart that I've put together the last couple of years, just for a quick reference. So what you're seeing here is a list of all the current backfields in the league, only players that are under contract. I have a list of guys that are currently free agents on the right, as well as the more relevant rookie running backs in this class, just so we have kind of a full picture of the running back position. I've also listed the cap space of these teams and their total number of draft picks. Total draft picks isn't going to be relevant that much in this year's class, since there's only a handful of guys that we really expect to get that day 2 or better draft capital, but it can be a little bit of a piece of the puzzle as far as what we should expect these teams to do with their backfields. And then the colors that you see, the bright colors on the left, those are just my arbitrary assumptions of what these teams are going to do at the running back position. We have a little key in the top right corner, green being the prime spots for high profile free agents or rookies, the yellow being other spots where those high profile free agents or rookies could land. Red would be teams I don't foresee adding anything meaningful. Maybe they spend a day 3 pick, maybe they add a depth guy, a practice squad guy, but nothing that is going to really move the needle. And then orange, a team that I would expect to add something at running back, but not a big piece, a complementary piece at running back. So we'll take a look. And then there are some names highlighted in blue. Those are players that I'd consider cut or trade candidates based on their contract size, injuries, age, whatever it might be. So we're going to go backfield by backfield. You guys feel free to chime in, especially if you think any of the colors on the left are just wrong, or you think that maybe we should update those. I'm sure I'll talk myself into changing some as we go, but I'm going to go top to bottom here. I'll start with the AFC East and work my way down. I think the Buffalo Bills are one of the more straightforward backfields. It'll be interesting to see who they bring in as coach and offensive coordinator as far as how these guys are used. But James Cook, he's an elite talent at the position. Honestly, I think if anything, maybe a new OC would be more willing to use him in the passing game. I don't think his usage is going to suffer no matter who they hire. Like he's that good. But they've got Cook, they've got Ray Davis, they've got Ty Johnson. All those guys are still under contract for next year. Ray Davis is their main kick returner. Ty Johnson's their 2-minute drill back. I think this is pretty clearly defined here. I think that one's pretty set. We have Miami Dolphins. They just promoted Bobby Slowick to be the offensive coordinator. Now, Bobby Slowick was a bit of a disaster with the Texans, but he has been working with Mike McDaniel this past year. And, I think this being an internal promotion probably is a good thing for Devon Achane. Just, don't rock the boat, right? Like he was on the team. He saw how effective Achane was as a rusher, how good he is as a receiver. The fact that we're keeping this in-house feels like a good sign that usage for Achane could stay the same. And with Jalen Wright and Ollie Gordon on the rookie contracts behind him, I just don't see this team really adding anything. They're also pretty low in cap space. They're currently 30 million over the cap. So I don't see any big running back additions coming to Denver. Then we have the Patriots backfield. Again, another one that I just think is pretty set. They have Ramondre Stevenson on a nice size contract. They have Trevion Henderson, obviously, on the rookie deal. They like both of those guys, as they should. The big offseason question with this backfield is, how much can Henderson take over? And is he going to be worth his dynasty price tag? And that's something that I'm going back and forth on. I did move him down a little bit. I think I moved him down. I don't know. I was really wavering, so I can't remember if I did it. I think I moved him behind James Cook and Jonathan Taylor. It's just really hard to justify him being ahead because not only is Ramondre there and actually playing really well under Vrabel, not only is he, clearly a player that is well liked and trusted, but Henderson, outside of being really explosive and having those splash plays, he hasn't had the down-to-down consistency that you'd like to see. It seemed like for a stretch in the middle of the season, he was really picking that up and his vision was improving. I was not very impressed with him in the game against the Texans in the playoffs, and the game they had before that I can't think of, against the who did they play before that? The 7th seed, the Chargers. Now those are two good defenses, but yeah, it's really tricky. Now he has all the upside in the world with Drake May, with the pass catching, with the explosiveness. So I'm not going to dock him very far. He's just too high of a ceiling. I still really liked him as a prospect. He can improve at the pass pro stuff year 1 to year 2. Typically, one of the biggest jumps we see for rookie running backs to year 2 is getting more receiving work, getting more passing down work. So I'm hopeful that he can get there. But again, I don't see this team investing. They do have Antonio Gibson also under contract, who should be coming back from that ACL tear. He actually should have the little ambulance emoji. All right. That brings us to the New York Jets. They are labeled green as a prime spot. Obviously not for a good offensive situation, but just because of the current depth chart. Breece Hall is a free agent. Now, I do expect Breece Hall, unfortunately, to be in a Jets uniform next year because just logically with how they handled the Breece Hall deadline situation, it seems really unlikely they would just let him walk in free agency. I've heard people say, well, they're letting him walk because they're going to get the same comp pick back anyway. That's just not true. Comp picks are a difference of spending, right? Between player going in and going out. For them to get a comp pick at all, they would have to let Breece Hall walk and then basically sign nobody at running back. So that's the first thing. And then even if they did that, their best case scenario is they're probably getting a 4th round comp pick back, and it would be next year. It's really odd to me that a team would decline trading a running back for a 4th round pick in the current year to instead get a 4th round comp pick in a future year that's actually going to be later because it's going to be all the way at the end of the round. I don't really understand why a team would do that. Now, the Jets are a pretty poorly run organization, so whatever. But my expectation is that Breece Hall is either signed to an extension or he is tagged. The Jets have $66 million in cap space, and they have absolutely nobody to spend it on. So I don't know why they wouldn't just throw the bag at Breece Hall and at least have one good player, well, 2 good players on their offense. So I don't think Breece Hall is going to be freed. I think he's going to be back here in New York. But if he were to leave, they have all the money in the world to sign somebody else. Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, whomever. If they don't sign anybody high profile, it'll be interesting to see which way they go. I really don't see them going with a Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis committee backfield, but we'll see. Then we have in the AFC West, we have the Denver Broncos. RJ Harvey is the only running back under contract right now. I think they have somebody as a restricted free agent, like Jaleel McLaughlin or something. Tyler Bede is a free agent. J.K. Dobbins is a free agent. They're going to add somebody for sure. That's why I have them in orange here. Complimentary, free agent, or rookie. If I had to guess, I'd say they just re-signed J.K. Dobbins here. They had a good thing going between those two guys. It's not great for Harvey. who would probably lose goal line work or maybe split goal line work. I don't know. Harvey's been fine down there. Would lose a lot of those early down carries as well. We'll see with Harvey. He has not been that impressive. I think he has a lot of skills on zone runs. He's got a lot of skills as a pass catcher out of the backfield. That meshes pretty well with Dobbins, who was a much better man and gap runner this year. So I could see them running that back. If not, bringing in somebody like Tyler Algier would make sense for this team. Somebody in that mold, or they could draft somebody. I'm not sure which way they would go, but I do expect them to add something to go with Harvey. And I have gradually moved Harvey down a bit. I was definitely over my skis, and I apologize if you acted on that ranking. I did have Harvey a touch too high at his peak. I got a little too excited about the second round draft capital, the offensive situation, and I kind of just ignored that there were some weaknesses in his performance, and pretty high likelihood that they go ahead and bring somebody else in here. With him being 25 next year, he was a late second round pick. Like, there's no guarantee that he's giving us RB1 production in the future. So I did move him down. I would take Quinshon Judkins over him, and I think I've got him pretty close to Cam Scatterby at this point. I think that's more so where he should be valued. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, honestly, just in like a laughably bad position as an organization right now. They are $62 million over the cap. They have the worst cap situation in the league, and their only running back currently under contract is Brashard Smith. Isaiah Pacheco is a free agent. Kareem Hunt's a free agent. I know we love the idea of Breece Hall to the Chiefs. I don't even see how they could afford him, even if he was allowed to walk. So I think that the Chiefs are going to end up being a pretty gross backfield. They might draft somebody on day 3. I can see it as clear as day that the Chiefs draft somebody on day 3 that gets steamed up to like the 202 in rookie drafts, and then ends up doing absolutely nothing. And then Kareem Hunt comes in and just becomes the bell cow again. But yeah, this will be one of the more interesting teams to monitor, because they could rocket somebody up like a Bijan Robinson, or not Bijan Robinson, Brian Robinson, or Rashad White, somebody who's like this low end guy that nobody's really thinking about, and just rocket them up to a really high point in Dynasty, because people see them as kind of the de facto starter for the Chiefs. And what is Rashad White if not just a younger Kareem Hunt, right? He seems like the perfect fit. Big guy they can run at the goal line. They can count on getting 3 yards every time he gets given the ball, can catch the ball competently out of the backfield. It's perfect. Jeremiah Love is the dream. He's a popular mock draft pick to the Chiefs. I don't think they'll do it either, but it would be really fun, for sure. Brashard Smith, certainly a guy you can stash. I just don't really think he's a running back. Now, he's going to work on that in the offseason, and maybe he can get there. He has really interesting athleticism and skills. Kind of, we were talking about Antonio Gibson earlier in the Discord. He's kind of in that Antonio Gibson mold, but even less polished as a runner. But crazier things have happened. He's certainly worth stashing. Like, he's the only currently under contract running back on one of the best offenses in the league. So why not? Raiders and Chargers I see as pretty much the same situation, both pretty boring. These are teams that have their young running back studs. These guys are both really valuable dynasty assets. They're first round picks. They're going to be extremely productive. They're going to get a ton of volume. The question is just, who are they going to bring in as backups? They're going to have to bring in somebody. Those players can become solid handcuffs. I would assume that Kamani Vidal will be back for the Chargers. He's like an exclusive rights free agent or something. So Kamani Vidal is like basically on the team already. So he's probably the handcuff you still want for Hampton. The Raiders could go any which way. They could draft a rookie. They could sign some random dust ball like a Brian Robinson. They could sign Kenneth Gainwell. They could sign Rashad White. They could sign anybody. They got plenty of cap space, second most in the league. They're going to need a backup behind Genty. But again, not something I'm really concerned about beyond just handcuff considerations. Moving on to the AFC North. I assume this backfield is going to stay exactly the same until I hear otherwise, that Derrick Henry's retiring or whatever. Henry's going to be back as the main guy. They're going to mix in Keaton Mitchell a little bit on early downs. They're going to mix in Justice Hill on late downs. We don't know yet who the offensive coordinator is going to be for the Ravens. They hired Jesse Minter as the head coach. He's a defensive guy, so we don't know the tendencies of this offense. I'm really hoping that we avoid Joe Brady, who I know was interviewing with them. We do not want Joe Brady because we do not, I personally do not want the Ravens to be 32nd in pass attempts again. I'm hoping they get somebody who's maybe a little bit more pass friendly, so we can get, the 2-time MVP a little more involved, and we can get Zay Flowers a little more involved. But yeah, backfield wise, pretty much the same as usual. Derrick Henry is gonna do Derrick Henry things. He'll probably be mediocre for 75% of the season, and then he'll win your league in December. And he'll just keep doing that until I am old and gray, and it'll never end. Yeah, don't forget Rasheen Ali. I didn't feel necessary to put an RB4 spot, but yes, if I had an RB4 spot, I would pencil in Rasheen Ali. Cincinnati Bengals. This one's a bit of a wild card. Chase Brown here as the RB1. Samaje Perine is back under contract, which is nice for a little bit of stability there. And Chase Brown is a guy that I've just sort of nudged up and up and up and up and up the rankings ever since the season ended, because, I'm just sleeping on this guy. Like, I can't say whether or not he's actually any good, or it's just when you have Joe Burrow dropping back and you have to worry about Chase and Higgins down the field, that there's a lot of space. I really don't know, but he caught a crazy number of passes. He ended up racking up a lot of rushing production. He gets tons of touches, and you listen to these, take coach speak for whatever you will, but Zach Taylor's back next year. The whole coaching staff is the same. They have all these comments. I thought Chase Brown had an outstanding season, very dependable. I have complete trust in Chase Brown in all three phases of playing running back, first and second down runner, coming out of the backfield, pass protection. Like, anything can happen. That's why I put them in yellow here. But if I had to guess, I would say Chase Brown is probably pretty safe as the RB1 for the Bengals. And if that's going to be the case, he's going to be a second or third round redraft pick again. You can't bury that guy too far in the rankings. So he's been a riser for me. Definitely a guy I wasn't putting a lot of stock into, again, because of the metrics. But if you're going to get the volume, you're going to get the volume. So I'm leaving him there. All right, Cleveland Browns. Probably not adding much, maybe a complimentary guy depending on Judkins' recovery, but they've got these two good young running backs in Judkins and Sampson. Sampson is very capable of playing that change of pace role. He can handle a start in a pinch. They'll probably add some third depth guy for super cheap, but this team's $23 million over the cap. They've got to figure out a quarterback situation. They have 10 draft picks. I would not be surprised if we just see some random rookie added to this backfield and we call it a day. Pittsburgh Steelers, interesting spot. Jalen Warren signed an extension. Caleb Johnson definitely seemed to be in Arthur Smith's doghouse, but Tomlin's gone. Arthur Smith is gone. It might be an interesting buy low on Caleb Johnson. Like, he gets a fresh start with a new coaching staff. Maybe he doesn't immediately screw everything up and he actually can get on the field. I wouldn't be surprised if this team brings back Kenneth Gainwell just as a culture guy. And I don't know, are we assuming that Aaron Rodgers comes back now that Mike McCarthy is the coach of the Steelers? I really have no idea. That was the most baffling hire of all time. To get Mike McCarthy, Mike McCarthy is just like a worse version of Mike Tomlin. Like, this just old school, steady coach, not going to innovate anything, going to get you, to the wild card round and then lose. I really don't understand the hire. I don't know what the point is. But either way, a chance for Caleb Johnson to have a fresh start, recapture the favor of Pittsburgh. So, yeah, I don't see a big addition here. Maybe a Gainwell, maybe something similar. If not, Caleb Johnson will be a quiet winner of the offseason, and Jalen Warren will be poised to have another, solid season. Sorry guys, I'm coming off a cold here, so I'm kind of losing my voice a little bit. I'm gonna try to go quickly through the rest of these teams. Houston Texans looking like a prime spot. I don't know what's up with Joe Mixon, if he's ever gonna play football again, if anybody knows where he is in the world, if he still has both of his ankles attached to his body. I don't know. Woody Marks is really, as far as I'm concerned, he's the only running back on the team. I do not think that will remain the case, so we'll see what they add, but it's going to be somebody. Maybe it's a lower tier free agent like a Rico Dowdle, but they're gonna bring somebody in. Colts, pretty straightforward. They've got JT. They're gonna ride JT. DJ Giddens is still there. Maybe he can push his way into that RB2 spot. Their other backs, Goodson, Abdullah, are hitting the market. They might just bring one or both of those guys back for a minimum contract. Just keep the backfield intact. But I don't expect much there. Jaguars, Tootin and LaQuint Allen, the two rookies, are your two running backs right now. ETN is a free agent. I've seen reports that the Jaguars are willing to let ETN walk. Who's to say? They don't have a ton of cap space right now. You can always get around that if you need to, but here's what we know about Liam Cohn, right? We know that he wasn't shy about letting Bucky Irving come in and force his way into a workhorse role during his rookie year. We know Liam Cohn is a bit of a running back whisperer. He can manufacture efficient running back production from pretty much anybody. And so if he was going to say like, hey, let somebody else pay ETN all the money, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to bet on this young guy in Tootin that he can be the lead guy. Maybe we bring in another rookie. I would not be surprised by that at all. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they just bring back Travis Etienne, who was, college teammates with Trevor Lawrence and has been on the team with him the whole time. And they just say, hey, you had a great season. Here's an extension. I can see that going either way. If they don't bring back Etienne, it goes without saying, it's Bashal Tootin to the moon season. You still have the draft, but not that many options in the draft that would really scare me much. And even if he's just like the 60% guy, which is kind of what ETN was this year, that's very, very fantasy friendly. So I am not quitting Bashal Tootin until I am forced to. I will still be trying to add him to teams, trying to get him thrown into deals. Don't sleep on that man. He had a great playoff game as well. Tennessee Titans, really just depends what they do with Pollard. Pollard and Spears are a totally viable backfield duo. I don't think they really feel the need to do anything differently with those guys. If they are unimpressed with Pollard, they can cut him and save a good bit of money. So they might do that. Not sure who they're getting as like a really impressive replacement option, but maybe just want to switch things up. So we'll see. Could go either way. They actually have the most cap space in the league. But again, I don't really think any of these big free agents are going to get to the market. I just don't know if any of these four guys are actually going to hit the market. So I'm just not sure it matters. Cowboys, they have one of the saddest looking backfields in the NFL right now. Malik Davis and Jaden Blue under contract. I mean, Jerry Jones has already come out and said, like, re-signing Javonte is our top priority. I'm pretty sure Javonte Williams will be back in Dallas next year. So I don't think we need to talk about that much. They're not going to draft Jeremiah Love. I don't know how many years in a row we have to talk about what if the Cowboys draft the top running back prospect before we can just drop it once and for all. They're not doing that, but they probably are re-signing Javonte to a nice little contract. The Giants are pretty set with Scadaboo and Tracy. Decent chance they cut Singletary. He's an expendable piece. New coach is coming in. Doesn't need to be paid the money that he is going to be making. I did hear on Scadaboo that he will likely be ready for the offseason program on April 16th. I don't know how much that involves anything physical, but he seems to be in a really good spot recovery-wise. Such a good spot that I like arguably should be ranked higher. I'm not entirely sure, but good signs so far for Scadaboo. Tracy remains the handcuff. Pretty simple. Eagles obviously have Saquon Barkley. Tank Bigsby is under contract for, I think, one more year. Will Shipley also under contract. This is going to stay pretty much exactly the same. Bigsby's going to be your change of pace guy. Shipley's going to be your long down and distance guy, kick return guy, whatever. Easy peasy. Washington Commanders, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is really their only running back. Everybody else is a free agent. Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez. I think Rodriguez is a restricted free agent. Yeah. That's what the asterisk means, actually. So Chris Rodriguez, they could bring back pretty easily. They have his rights, so they just have to match whatever another team offers or whatever. They can put like a, what's the word? It's not a comp pick. A tender on him. So good chance Rodriguez is back. So, pretty similar to last year where they'd have to kind of battle it out for the lead back duties. Neither of them really catch passes, so we probably see somebody else coming in. My fun prediction for free agency is the Commanders signing Rachaad White. I mean, I don't know if it's fun for fantasy, but it's kind of like, a fun prediction. They signed Rachaad White, who actually played with Jaden Daniels in college. As that pass catching specialist, he actually works as a pretty good complement to these other two guys. So he's kind of a younger but equally washed Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols type that could be a reasonable complement. But either way, I expect they'll add somebody. We get to the Arizona Cardinals here to kick off the NFC West. This thing could go any number of ways. James Conner is still on the team. He could be cut. He could come back and be the starter. I don't really remember how bad his injury was. I assume it was really bad. He's very old for running back standards. So not a guy we can really expect anything out of, but he's battled back from worse things in his career. So we'll see. Trey Benson's still there as well. He missed all of the rest of the season when he had that runway to be the starter. So I could see James Conner being the starter. I could see Trey Benson being the starter. I could see a free agent. I could see a draft pick. This could genuinely go any number of ways. I've got no issue with rostering Benson cheap if you can get him cheap, because there's upside there, obviously. But I would not just expect Benson to be handed back this job after what happened last season. I don't think they can really rely on him. And plus, we have a whole new staff coming in, so they might not even like him. So, a lot of considerations with the Cardinals. I don't have a good feel for that. Rams, they're going to run it back with Kyron, Blake Corum, Jarquez Hunter. Nothing to mess with here. Kyron's under contract. Corum is rookie deal. Hunter is rookie deal. Easy. 49ers. Christian McCaffrey is obviously the main guy there. Brian Robinson hits free agency. I don't know why they would prioritize bringing him back when they barely used him last year. So probably just going to let him go. Kyle Shanahan did throw a comment out about Jordan James and wanting to use Jordan James and being excited about him as a contributor in the future. I could totally see Jordan James being next year's Brian Robinson. He's a very competent, high floor, but kind of unexplosive, reliable running back archetype. He's had a year to learn the system. He's a guy you should probably pick up if he's on waivers. He could be the handcuff next year. Isaac Arendo, I guess, has fallen out of favor. I don't know what his deal is, but kind of seems to me like he's fallen down the pecking order. So, whatever. Any running back in a Shanahan offense probably worth rostering, but I think Jordan James is the guy I would rather have. Seahawks are now in a tricky spot with Charbonnet having the ACL tear. You're going to need to go get another back. Obviously, they do have a lot of cap space, which is really impressive. I mean, they're going into potentially the Super Bowl. They've got $71 million in cap space. However, they do only have 4 draft picks. So all of these things, the cap space, the draft picks, the Charbonnet injury tells me they are going to write Kenneth Walker a blank check to play football for them next year. I would be shocked at this point if Kenneth Walker is on a different football team next year. So you could see that as good or bad. Probably good in the near term, early season stuff if Charbonnet is still limited. Arguably bad long term because this staff has already shown us that they don't view Walker as a workhorse. Now, Clint Kubiak is still very live to be poached to another team. And maybe a new coordinator comes in and sees it differently. But yeah, either way, I think Kenneth Walker is almost certainly a Seahawk next year. NFC North. This is one I've had to really shift my priors on. I was very anti DeAndre Swift to start the year, like laughably anti DeAndre Swift. He was ranked way too low. I came up and up and up and up and up on Swift. And now the success that their rushing attack had, Swift is on it's a cuttable contract, but it's also like not that expensive of a contract. I'm not going to say it's low risk. In fact, I was going to change this to yellow. I think red is too confident. But I'd say similar to Chase Brown, it's like, do they really have any reason to mess with this backfield with Swift and Monangai? Like, they're a good complement. They both were effective and efficient. Could they get somebody in here that would be even better? Sure. But are they really going to draft Jeremiah Love to do that? Are they going to move heaven and earth to get Travis Etienne? Other than that, what are their real options? If Hall and Walker and Javonte are off the market, what are they really going to do to replace DeAndre Swift? Probably not much. So I would not be surprised at all if this duo is back next year and doing their thing again. So I've moved Swift up the rankings a little bit as well. Definitely a guy I'm comfortable grabbing with the expectation that he's an RB2 next year. Once again, Lions, it's going to be the Jahmyr Gibbs show no matter what. The question is whether or not David Montgomery is back with the team. Brad Holmes made a comment. Sorry, guys, I can hear myself getting more nasally. There was a comment about David Montgomery that was kind of cryptic and was like, maybe he won't be on the team next year. Maybe we'll let him go somewhere else where he can be used more. I don't think it really matters for Gibbs. Like, Gibbs is going to get what he's going to get. It's just whether the backup is Montgomery or someone they draft or some cheaper free agent, whether it's Brian Robinson or whatever. It doesn't really matter for Gibbs. And I don't really know how many spots David Montgomery could go to get like a really sizable role, but I would say getting cut is probably better than staying behind Gibbs. There's at least a little bit more upside there. So that would be interesting if you roster Montgomery. Packers, probably just going to stick with Jacobs again next year. Very Packers-esque player, even if he's not the most effective back in the world right now. But they're probably going to add somebody else because Emmanuel Wilson's a restricted free agent. So they could just bring back Emmanuel Wilson. In theory, Marshawn Lloyd is still a player that exists. In practice, I don't know if he ever plays a snap, but yeah, they'll need somebody behind Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson, a draft pick, whatever. Vikings, prime spot. Aaron Jones is a cut candidate. He's just not that effective at this point. He's always banged up. He's really old. Jordan Mason is very one-dimensional, not a guy they're going to install as the starter, I don't think. So, really fun spot potentially for a Jeremiah Love. Could draft somebody like Jonah Coleman or Jadarian Price. They could be in on one of these free agents. A lot of ways this could go for the Vikings, but I would expect them to do something. Draft pick might be more likely than... Well, not a first-round draft pick because the cap hit's still pretty high there. A later draft pick might be more likely paired with Jordan Mason because they have such a bad cap situation. Falcons have Bijan. Just don't have a backup right now. If I had to guess right now, I put him on the thumbnail. I would give Algier like pretty good odds to be a starter somewhere or like at least like a 1A, in a committee situation. He's a really good back. I think if we see all the other top free agents get brought back to their own teams, he could become one of the best guys there, one of the best available guys. And I could see a team picking him up, a team like the Saints could poach him, the Cardinals, not the Cowboys, the Texans. He would be a good compliment on the Broncos. I think there's a lot of spots he could go that would make sense. So Tyler Algier, definitely an interesting guy to add in Dynasty. Panthers, With Rico Dowdle hitting free agency, we've heard some really positive comments about Jonathan Brooks. Keep trying to get Jonathan Brooks added into trades. Keep trying to get Brooks on your teams. He could be the starter as soon as next year. I think, honestly, it would just make the most sense for the team to keep Chuba Hubbard as like a steady veteran presence, locker room guy, bring Jonathan Brooks along to hopefully make him the starter eventually, and then let Rico Dowdle walk in free agency. I think that's ultimately how it'll play out. Saints, Alvin Kamara. I don't know if Alvin Kamara ever comes back or plays football again. He seemed to think he would retire before playing for someone other than the Saints. So if he gets cut, he might just sit out. Not a guy I'm very excited about either way. If he does get cut or retires or whatever, I do not believe that Devin Neal is going to be the starter. So this would be a spot where you'd expect somebody to be added. Could be a Jeremiah Love spot. I mean, maybe not the best investment for their team, but definitely would fit a need. Give a weapon to Tyler Shuck. I don't know. And then finally, the Buccaneers, they have Bucky Irving. Obviously, I'm hoping for a bounce back. New OC is Zach Robinson. You could see the Zach Robinson hire kind of good or bad for Bucky. The good is that Bijan was used in a lot of really creative ways in the passing game last year. And, Bucky is not Bijan in that regard, but maybe he brings some of those concepts. I do think that Sean Tucker will probably be back because he is a restricted free agent. And the negative side of Zach Robinson is that we have seen he's totally comfortable if he's comfortable letting Tyler Algier punch in touchdowns for Bijan Robinson, you'd have to imagine he's comfortable letting Sean Tucker punch in touchdowns for Bucky Irving. That would be my biggest concern about Zach Robinson. So could be some good, some bad. If Rachaad White goes and Bucky picks up all that receiving work and he gets a little bit more of that usage, then I think it could all be fine. But yeah, that'll be an interesting one to monitor. As far as rookie running backs, just last thing, Jeremiah Love locked in, top 15 pick. Jonah Coleman and Jadarian Price are probably the only other guys in this class that I would say have a chance to go in the second round. And then after that, you have a mixture of guys that could go in the third round. Emmett Johnson could, Singleton could, Katron Allen could. Like, it just depends on what these teams need and what they're willing to pay up. Remember, RJ Harvey was a projected day 3 pick. He ends up going in round 2. So these guys can jump a little bit, but maybe more likely day 3 picks. Probably only going to get like 4 running backs on day 1 and day 2 combined. That's just the type of class that it is. But could be some interesting landing spots for day 3 guys. We'll see. Anyway, my voice is pretty shot. Hopefully that was interesting to you guys. Good overview of running backs. If you liked that, we're going to try to do the same thing next week with pass catchers, wide receivers, tight ends. Take a look at every single team. Where do they stand going into the offseason? I'm also planning a video next week on my Dynasty cornerstone rankings. Just a chance to talk about some of the higher end pieces in Dynasty that don't get brought up as much because they're not as often the buys and sells that we talk about. So bringing in those rankings for a video. And then if you didn't see in the Find a League, I posted a $50 startup that I want to do a live commentary, kind of stealing it completely from Dynasty Domain, but it's a good idea. Commentating over a live startup just to see how that goes, get a feel for the market. So anyway, guys, thanks for coming to hang out tonight. Hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. Hope you enjoy the conference championship games. And hopefully I don't lose my power tomorrow due to a blizzard. So fingers crossed. Hope you guys have a good rest of your night.